Somewhere in Tokyo right now, a man is sitting in the same bedroom he walked into in 1994. He's 51 years old. He hasn't had a job since he was 23. His mother, who is 82, still leaves a tray of food outside his door every evening at 6. Sometimes it's gone by morning. Sometimes it's still sitting there, untouched, when she comes back the next night to leave another one. He is one of 1.46 million people in Japan living exactly like this. Some have been in that room for 6 months, some for 30 years, and the number is climbing. In 1968, an American scientist built a room a lot like that one, on purpose. 8 mice, unlimited food, no predators, no threats of any kind. He wanted to find out what happens when nothing is required of you anymore. He gave it 5 years. Every single mouse died. Nobody built a room for the man in Tokyo. Nobody ran an experiment on him. He just walked in one day in 1994 and never walked back out. And the strange part is, what happened to him next looks almost exactly like what happened inside that box. Let's go back to 1998. A psychiatrist named Tamaki Saito has a patient sitting across from him, a teenage boy who stopped going to school 8 months ago. The boy isn't depressed, not in any way Saito can diagnose. He isn't suicidal. He doesn't fit any category in the manual. He just stopped, not all at once, one step at a time, the way water leaves a glass, slow enough that nobody in the house could point to the day it happened. First, he stopped going to school. His mother told the neighbors he had the flu. Then, he stopped seeing the two friends he used to have. They texted for a while, then stopped, the way people do when nobody answers. Then, he stopped leaving his room, except to use the bathroom at night, when the rest of the house was asleep, and he wouldn't have to pass anyone in the hallway. Then, he stopped opening his door when his mother knocked, and she learned to leave the tray and walk away without waiting. Then, eventually, he stopped speaking to her altogether. Not out of anger, just silence. Because silence was easier than whatever a conversation would have to be about. Saito starts asking around. Other doctors, other clinics, and he keeps hearing the same staircase step by step, with a different name attached every time. A girl in Osaka who hasn't left her room in a year. A boy in Sapporo whose parents haven't seen his face in 8 months. They only know he's still alive because the food they leave keeps disappearing. Saito gives it a name of his own, hikikomori, pulling inward. He guesses there might be a few 100,000 people living this way across the country. People think he's exaggerating. He isn't. He's early. Now, back to the box. Calhoun's mice settle in. For 104 days, almost nothing happens. They explore, they pair off, they figure out who sleeps where. Then, the first litters are born. The population starts doubling every 55 days. By day 315, there are over 600 mice climbing the walls of an enclosure built for a few hundred. This is where it starts to break. The young males have nowhere to go, no new territory to claim, because there isn't any. So they stop trying. They drift into the center of the room and just lie there. When another mouse attacks one of them, he doesn't fight back. He takes the hit, stands up, walks a few feet, and lies back down. Calhoun starts calling them the beautiful ones. Perfect coats, because they never fight anymore. And functionally dead, because they never do anything else either. He keeps watching. The females start retreating too, climbing to the highest apartments and staying there alone. And the mothers who stay below begin to come apart in a different way. Defending a nest in a colony this crowded takes constant work, and the males have stopped helping. So the mothers do it alone, exhausted, nursing one litter while fighting off the rest of the colony, until some of them simply can't anymore. They abandon nests mid-litter. They forget which pups are theirs. Calhoun stands above the enclosure for hours, just counting how many of them have stopped moving, and how many have stopped caring for the ones who are still alive. Now follow the boy from Saito's office down the same staircase. 8 months of silence becomes a year. A year becomes 5. Somewhere around year 3, he stops checking job listings. Somewhere around year 7, he stops telling himself this is temporary. By the time he might have tried to come back, the classmates he'd left behind had jobs, marriages, children starting elementary school of their own. He was still introducing himself the way a 23-year-old would. 25 years later, he's the man in the Tokyo bedroom. And he's not unusual anymore. 20 years ago, hikikomori was mostly a story about teenagers. Now the fastest growing group is men his age, men who walked into a room sometime in the late 90s and never quite walked back out. Here's the part that doesn't add up at first. His mother is 82, he is 51. In Japan, they call this the 8050 problem. Parents in their 80s, children in their 50s. One still feeding the other. The math only works as long as she's alive to make dinner. Some of these men are only found by neighbors, months after the fact, when the mail stops being collected, and somebody finally asks why. And the word itself already knew this. Hikikomori, yin kikomori, doesn't mean alone. It doesn't mean shy. It means pulling inward, being pulled in, and staying there. Calhoun had a phrase for the worst part of his enclosure, too. He called it the behavioral sink, a place things get pulled into and don't come back out of. Two men, 50 years and 6,000 miles apart, looking at two completely different species, reaching for almost the same word. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Think about the last plan you canceled. Not because anything was actually wrong, just because leaving the house felt like one step too many. Think about how many of this week's conversations happened entirely through a screen, because picking up the phone felt like more than you had to give. Count the days since you last had an unscripted, in-person conversation that nobody made you have. Your reasons always sound fine in the moment. You were tired, it was raining. You'd see them next week instead. None of that makes you the man in the Tokyo bedroom. That's not the point. The point is that he didn't get there in one day either. He got there one step at a time, the same staircase every time. Cancel one thing, then it's easier to cancel the next. A message replaces a call. A call replaces a visit. Each trade makes sense on its own, in the moment you make it. None of them feel like the first step onto a staircase you might not walk back up. Calhoun spent the rest of his life trying to find the one thing he could put back into a paradise to keep it from collapsing. Not less comfort. He didn't think that was the answer. He thought the answer was roles. Reasons people still need each other, badly enough to keep showing up. Picture the door again. 82 years old, a tray in her hands. She used to knock. She stopped knocking around year 11. She still sets the tray down every night. Sometimes it's gone by morning. That's the only conversation they still have. Calhoun believed we could choose differently. The answer isn't in yet.